of running the Islamic Jihad. Again, they were not listening to him. They were so busy with themselves. Salahuddin now decides to take matters in his hand. He moves his army through Palestine and takes over the land that was governed by Nuruddin Zenki, and now he governs all of this. And with the united Muslim Ummah, they conquered the Christians. The Battle of Hattin, he crushed them. His army was only 12,000. He crushed them. The Christians were so angry with this, the Crusaders, they sent more support. 250,000 soldiers gathered in Akka. And Salahuddin meets them with only 12,000. It's a long, long story. But we race back to power. A few years later, the Crusaders were thrown away forever from Palestine. But that is the story behind it. Salahuddin did not come suddenly. There was a lot of Islamic work among the masses by the scholars. And there was a lot of work to unite the Ummah before Muslims were able to conquer their enemies. Few years later, the Mongolians came. And the Mongolians started to crush everyone in their path, and they crushed the Abbasi Empire, and they crushed Muslims in northern Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and they entered Palestine, and they were going to Europe, and they were going to North Africa. No one could stop them. But suddenly there was a scholar, one of the greatest scholars. His name is Al-Izz ibn Abd salam. I'm saying this long history for our children so that they will have some examples for them to follow. The young men and women, Islam is great by the greatness of the people. It's not great. It does not become great alone. We have to work for it. Al-Izz ibn Abd salam was in Syria. He was not Egyptian. He was in Syria. And he asked the leader of Damascus to declare jihad. And the answer against the Mongols before they come. And the answer of the leader of Syria is to throw Al-Izz ibn Abd salam out of the country. So he moved to Egypt, and the leaders of Egypt accepted him. He was a Syrian in Egypt, but see, Islam has no nationality. And he became the leader of the scholars in Egypt. All the scholars submitted to him. And that's why he was called Sultan al-Ulama. He was the leader, Sultan of the scholars. See, when we are truly Muslims, I don't care what nationality are you from. I don't care. And you don't care. Because we both care about Islam, not ourselves. So, Al-Izz ibn Abd salam started to move the masses towards jihad. And he was able to convince the Mamluk leaders to declare jihad. And they did. Against whom? Against the Mongolians, the Tatar, that nobody stopped. A very small army formed in Egypt, led by Saifuddin Qutuz, one of the great names you should always remember, Saifuddin Qutuz, who declared Wa Islama. It's not a national fight. It's not a fight over wealth or oil wells. It is a fight for Islam. And among the first people in his army was This old scholar, Al-Izz ibn Abd salam. He is not a scholar who gave khutbah and sat down doing nothing. He was a scholar who joined the army. And a scholar that gives an example. Again, again we see scholars' role in reviving Islam. And alhamdulillah, Muslims were victorious in the battle of Ain Jalut. And that was the end of the Mongols in the Muslim lands. From that point on, they were defeated and they ran away. Anyway, so we see the movement. Islam did not crush like other civilizations, 2-3 years, gone. That did not happen to Islam. Islam took hundreds of years to decline. Why? Because the leaders might deviate. And the scholars, some of them might deviate. But the ideology is preserved because the Quran is preserved. And as long as the Quran is preserved and Muslims read it and understand it, they will come back. So, that continued and continued. Inshallah, 10 minutes, I'll finish. Continued and continued until the beginning of the 20th century. Let me give you a quick history. 1908. I'm skipping a lot of events. 1908. At that time, the Ottoman Empire were the greatest nation in Islam. It became weak. It was very strong in the beginning. By the 20th century, it became very weak. It was led by Sultan Abdul Hamid. The Jews, led by Herzl, tried to negotiate with him to sell them Palestine. He said, "Over my dead body." Herzl went back to the Jewish congregation in Basel, Switzerland, saying that as long as Abdul Hamid is the leader of the Muslims, we will have no part in Palestine. We must get rid of him. So they worked and worked hard for years until they formed their own group inside the Turkish land. And they were joined by several very influential people. Among them is a man who was leading one of the divisions of the army. His name is Mustafa Kemal. Later on, given the title Ataturk, the father of the Turk. That is not his name, that is his title. Anyway, huge conspiracy. 1908, they were able to send the Khalifa Abdul Hamid in exile. And they ruled. The Khilafah was still there. After Sultan Abdul Hamid came Sultan Muhammad Rashad. After Sultan Muhammad Rashad came Sultan Abdul Majid. The Khilafah was there, but only in name. These people, organized by the Jews, ruled. During that time, Britain, France, Europeans were strong. They wanted to take over this Sikh empire. So they organized themselves to attack the Muslims. And they did. And they were able to take over Egypt. And they were trying to attack Palestine. But the Ottoman army stopped them. And the army's center that stopped them was Aqaba. Al-Aqaba, southern Jordan. So Allenby and his army could not move, the British army could not move into Palestine because of Al-Aqaba. So the British sent their own spy to try to break